Hello, listeners. This week we have my conversation with friend of the pod, Rikki Schlott, to discuss my new book, Hey Yang, Where's My $1,000, including some crazy Q&A and live interaction. This was recorded live at P&T Knitwear in Lower Manhattan. I'll be visiting more cities on the book tour, so check out andrewyang.com/events for more info. Would love to see you out there. Come say hello.
Please help me in welcoming Rikki Schlott and Andrew Yang.
Thank you, New York City. Thank you. It's great to see you all. And thanks for doing this, Rikki.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I really enjoyed the book, and I love the framing of answering questions that people ask you on the street, including where is my $1,000? But what are some of those questions, and why address them now in book form?
The most common question I get is, are you Andrew Yang, or do I know you? The alternate title of the book was, Hey, am I racist, or are you Andrew Yang? Which I have gotten, and I considered saying, no, I'm not, and then walking off. And I wouldn't do that, to be sort of obnoxious. The person was perfectly pleasant, too. So I wanted to share stories of my experiences that there was really no space to do in, for example, a weekly newsletter that I write. I don't know how many of you subscribe to my Substack. If you don't, you should check it out, considering you're here. It might not be so blatant in another context, but I mean, if you took time to come to this book event, then my newsletter might be of interest. But it's difficult for me to share some of those experiences in that context, because most of the time I'm communicating something serious about current events or politics or business or jobs. And I had this buildup of all of these experiences that I felt some people would enjoy hearing about. And one of the purposes of this book was just to share my humanity with folks who might have supported me over the last number of years. I said, like, is there a person there, like behind Andrew Yang, like in quotes? So that's what drove me to write this book. And I'm really glad you enjoyed it, Rikki, because I enjoyed writing it.
And before I kind of run through and pick out what I'm most interested in, I'm wondering if there's a story that sticks out that is kind of a favorite of yours and what you most want to get across to the audience.
So there's a story about when I was running for mayor that mentally ill homeless man started heckling me, and then he recruited another homeless person with $20. And so then the two of them started following me around chanting, like, Andrew Yang sucks. And I found that funny on one level, but also like, oh my gosh, we got to keep moving, or they're going to recruit more homeless men, and I'm going to have this caravan. And so in the book I say, everyone knows 3 people is a movement. And I'm sure the New York Times would have written about the anti-Andrew Yang movement if they didn't listen to the third person. But the first person's actually outside right now.
So that's fun.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, like, dude, I wrote about you. I mean, on one level, I'm really glad he's okay, because, I'm glad on that level.
You make the choice to really go back to your childhood and through boarding school and college and tell a whole host of stories of your time growing up. What's one moment that you share that's most special to you, or that's most formative to who you are today?
When you write a book like this, it's hard to structure. And Rikki, you've written like 1.5 books, I suppose. You're halfway through the Modern Dating book.
Oh, hopefully halfway.
What's it called?
Should be.
The Modern Dating book, so people can expect it.
The title's sort of TBD, but I think Screwed, maybe.
Screwed? I mean, that's going to sell well. Am I right, New York? Yes. I'd just be like, Screwed by Andrew Yang. Rikki will be like, curse that guy. Last time I moderate conversation. So you've written 1.4 books, it sounds like. And so when you write a book, you kind of need some structure.
Yeah.
And then the most obvious structure is chronological. And so when I wrote this book, and the first chapter is stories from the mayoral, in part because I wanted people to feel like they're inserted immediately into something very eventful. But then you think, hey, some people are going to read this book and not know who the heck I am, and they might have an interest in my background. Plus, my entire mission with this book was just to entertain. And my childhood is pretty fucking entertaining, just like most everyone's childhood, right? Especially if your parents were immigrants. How many of you all had parents who were immigrants? I mean, that stuff is really funny, you know? I mean, maybe it's not funny at the time. Maybe at the time you're like, oh no. You got this like sinking feeling because, you know, at the time you're 10 and you're embarrassed by like whatever the heck your parents know or don't know or don't do. And so I was sharing some of those stories in part to introduce myself, but also because I wanted the entire book actually to have that general arc of like the kid who shows up, the children of immigrants, you know, not knowing much about certainly what was to come, and then ends on a somewhat uplifting note in the present day.
So I'm going to fast forward kind of considerably, but I was very interested to hear you articulate why you decided to run for president. And as always, I'm just so impressed and also somewhat disturbed by your foresight on AI and how central that was to your decision to run. Can you just explain how that related and how central that was to your campaign, and also like how does it feel now looking back to maybe have been too early on AI?
Yeah, I ran because I thought AI was going to come and eat the jobs. And how many of you were, let's say in Iowa during the campaign, because I said some of you were. Not that many, actually, turns out. Where the fuck were you? No? Congratulations, we're all still poor because of you. No, I'm kidding. So I was in Iowa in 2019, talking at the truck stop, being like, hey guys, the robot trucks are coming. We need to speed up in a very real way. And I think I do tell the story in the book where this very nice grandma on election night, primary night, grabbed me by the shoulder and said, please run again. And I was like, lady, I'm running right now. But that was the kind of message I got. By the way, that showed up in the numbers too, where if you looked at my, like I won the Iowa Youth Straw Poll. I won who would you want to get a beer with. I won who cares about people like me. And so I was very well liked by the Iowans, like that grandma who tugged my shoulder. It's just they weren't willing to nominate me for president because I'd failed in their estimation in 2 threshold issues, which you can't really get mad at them. I mean, judgment is judgment. But so they actually sensed in me, it's like cares about people like me, understands the future, like all that stuff I scored really high. The stuff I could not get over the hump with the Iowans on was can beat Donald Trump and has the right experience. And so like those 2 I just couldn't convince them of. And by the way, did we then spend millions of dollars on TV ads trying to convince them of those 2 things? Yes, we did. It didn't quite work. So I ran for president because I was very certain of this automation wave that was coming. I didn't know the precise timing. I didn't know the precise structure. When ChatGPT came out in 2022, it wasn't like, oh, like this is exactly what I saw coming. But I just knew it was 5 to 10 years away back in 2018 was what I thought. Turns out it was like maybe 4 years away. And I sat with friends in Silicon Valley who agreed with me that the automation wave, by the way, I would just go to Silicon Valley and be like, hey guys, AI coming? They're like, yup. And I'd be like, are you guys, I mean, say we, I mean, I'm not including myself in this, but like, are you going to blast away millions of jobs? And they're like, yup. And then it's like, do you want to do anything about it? And then there was silence. And then I said, how about I run for president and alert the country that we're doing this, you're doing this, I mean, I'm not doing it, and that we should make a case for universal basic income. And at least some of those techies said, sure, let's do that. Some less so. And one of the things that happens when you do something dramatic like run for president is some people come through for you in ways that restore any faith in humanity you might have. and some people don't, really. And you cannot predict which is which. Like there can be someone where you'd be 99% sure that they would be there with you in the trench or whatever, and they let you down, and then this other person you barely know shows up in Iowa for weeks on end. So I was very certain of the direction of things, Rikki. I just didn't know the exact timing and which jobs would go first.
And on that note, what views at that time have held steady, and what of those prognoses have not held up, and how have your views on AI changed?
I saw my friend here as the War on Normal People, which I'm very proud of. I think it holds up quite well, though I am now working on a sequel called The End of Normal that's going to happen after this book. The War on Normal People, I talk a lot about trucks. And I talk a lot about how it's the most common job, or driving a truck's the most common job in 29 states, and that you'd save tens of billions of dollars if you could automate trucking, and there's a shortage of truckers, and that when robot trucks hit the highway, it's going to be devastating for all of these communities. Now, fast forward to 2026, there are robot trucks on the highways, but it's not displacing tens of thousands of truckers. I mean, they're doing certain routes and like certain areas, so it's not at scale. So I got the sequence wrong. Where what's really happening right now is the automation of white-collar work, particularly of entry-level white-collar work. And Rikki, sometimes I reflect on the fact that if I had seen that sequence back in 2020 and 2019, would I have run around being like, "Hey, college graduates, you're fucked," I mean, I don't know if that would have been awesome campaign fodder. I don't know if that was a winning message. But I naturally thought that the blue-collar workers were going to get automated first.
And now that we know more about AI, obviously still many things are speculative. How do you think that's impacted public sentiment about universal basic income, if at all?
80% of Americans, I could actually show of hands, how many of you think that the government should be regulating AI in a more serious way? So that's 80% of Americans would agree with you. and I got a sense that it's true of 90% of the people in this room. I'm in that 90% or 80% or whatever it is. I think it's crazy. There was someone who posted that you'd have to jump through more hoops to open a hot dog stand than you do to have like a large language model that might touch millions of people's lives. That's crazy. And when you look at what's happening from both of our current political parties, it is hard to identify someone who's making that case for sensible regulation. What you do here is, hey, we're in an AI arms race with China, got a win-win-win. Anything you do to hold us back is bad for national competitiveness and security. Trump is just there, with his arm around various tech CEOs being like, yeah, let's build giant data centers. And the Democrats are also right there too, at the ribbon cutting. And I kind of get it in that if you were a governor of a state where they're building a data center, you sort of have to celebrate it, because it's economic activity. It's jobs. I mean, it's not as many jobs as you like to think. I mean, that data center is largely automated. So you have both parties that are really out of step with what most Americans want on this particular issue, because all the money is in AI right now. We're talking about trillions of dollars, really, like hundreds of billions of dollars in enterprise value. It's driving something like 2/3 of current stock market price appreciation. So one of the major themes of my presidential campaign, I think the reason why many of you are here tonight, is that the market is going to get a lot of things wrong upcoming, but right now the market is very firmly in the AI unlimited camp, and then both parties are also in that camp. Now, there is going to be an opportunity for someone, and you're seeing glimmers of this, like Bernie Sanders is an example, where he's like, hey, we shouldn't be opening data centers if it's going to increase the cost of electricity for the community. I mean, things that a lot of people could get behind. But right now, no one has been able to harness the popular sentiment. And the major issue I think we're facing is that popular sentiment is less and less important in terms of what our leaders are doing. Thank you, listeners. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, send them to mailbag@andrewyang.com, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you.
And so back to the book. Sorry, that was my selfish diversion because I'm always very curious to hear your most up-to-date thoughts on AI. But you describe presidential debates as a very weird experience, direct quote. Why?
Yeah, it's like a competitive theater performance. And the moderators are far from objective. They, in some cases, have already worked out with certain candidates what they're going to ask and what they're going to say. And the first time you're up there, and this is, by the way, one of the reasons why things are going so poorly in America, is that I thought the entire Trump fake news thing was nonsense when he first started saying it back in Trump's first term. And then on some of these stages, I was like, yo, there's some like weird stuff going on here. Like there was one time the debate went on for, and some of you remember this because you were supporting me at this time, but the debate went on for like 26 minutes without my getting a question. And there was one time when it was clear that they were supposed to come to me, and then they didn't. And you know they were supposed to come to me because the camera went to me, and the light went on. I was like, okay. And then they asked someone else a question. I was like, what the fuck was that? But then when you're there too, and you can see it, every once in a while, a candidate will just be like, screw it, I'm just gonna talk out of turn. And then the moderators just act like that person never said anything as soon as they're done. You know what I mean? Like if you watch the back these debates, so, and that wasn't really like my style. Like if I tried to pull that, and I had teams. Some of my campaign team might even be here tonight. No, they sat this out. It's fine. But so that they'd be saying ahead of time. It's like, hey, look, they're gonna not give you a whole lot of airtime, so like maybe we'll. The most successful version of this was at the ABC debate when I had this in the book, where during the prep session they were like, this debate's gonna be super boring. George Stephanopoulos is just gonna ask policy questions. It's gonna be a snooze. No one's gonna remember anything. The only thing people are gonna watch is the first 10 minutes, and you all get an opening statement. So let's do something kind of stunt-y. And what we came up with, and so you remember this, is like, let's just give money away. It's like give $1,000 a month to 10 families. It's like 120,000, sure, we'll give $120,000 away. You guys probably remember this. It was like the Houston debate, and then I did this, and then people, people loved it. The other candidates hated it, the press hated it, but then our numbers went through the roof, like immediately. And if anything, if I ever regret on the debates, we didn't do more stuff like that. Like I should have just gone every time full Richard Dawson, Running Man, game show, like whatever the heck, But it was hard in real time because, you're trying to compete, and so it's like, oh, you don't want to become like a joke or like a this or that. But I should have pushed the envelope more.
And I love the anecdote about getting stuck in traffic going to one of your rallies and then realizing it was traffic for you. What is it like to be at the center of a rally where everyone's attention is dedicated towards you and people have tattoos of you on their body, literally, apparently?
Let's see the tattoos, New York. Price of admission. There was so much love and enthusiasm and warmth, and you felt supercharged by it. And that was accentuated at the rallies, where everyday people would come and actually project their hopes for the future onto you. And it was awesome in the sense that I felt superpowered and supercharged. I said to my wife, Evelyn, it felt like I was holding a live wire for a number of weeks, really, down the stretch. And I'm so glad I got to have that experience in the sense that, it's like feeling that charged up and motivated to do everything you can in your power. So that's the way it felt. I encourage everyone here to run for president and then get a rally of thousands of people chanting your name so you too can experience that. No, I mean, it was singular, something that I took to heart. And by the way, one of the things, I'm not sure I say this in the book, I'll say this to you all, whatever, where I said to myself down the stretch, in part because of those rallies and all the people that supported me, was I'd said, no matter what, win or lose, I'm going to bust my ass for this country for 4 years. Like after 2020, I'm just going to act like I won even if I lost, in the sense of just like 4 years of good public service. In part because when other people ran for president and lost, they disappeared. You know, I never heard from them again. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. you know what I mean? So I said, you know what, I'm just going to grind for 4 more years after this. And I would not have felt that way if not for all the support that I got on the campaign.
And I've met a lot of the people that have worked for you or that come to your events, and it's obvious that you draw an unusually young and a very motivated and dedicated crowd. What about your message do you think kind of draws in a certain type of person, and who do you think really responds to it?
Oh, I'm thrilled that it does tend to cross over intergenerationally. I get a lot of kids here in New York. I'll say kids, young adults, who will say to me, like, "You were my favorite candidate in high school," and then I do the math, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, now they're 23, and like they came to New York City and they're like working here, and then they got to meet me and they're excited." It's like, oh, that's actually lovely and beautiful. Though it does make me think, like, damn, you were in high school, like how much time has passed here since this campaign. I think some people sensed that I was speaking from the heart as a human being, and then they responded to that, where you can tell that I don't have talking points that were devised by consultants to reach a maximal number of people or this demographic group. And that speaks to some people, not 51% of people, turns out. But those of you that it did reach, really grateful. And I think part of it too is that we used social media a lot, and that ended up attracting young people in particular.
And another anecdote I thought was funny was that Bill de Blasio said it as an aside to you when you first entered the mayoral race, "Welcome to the zoo." How would you compare the presidential cycle versus the mayoral cycle, and is it messier or different in some meaningful way here locally?
Well, I had the opposite experience in both, in the sense that running for president, I was the likable upstart, and my team joked that I was the Grim Reaper of presidential candidates because anytime I passed you in the polls, you would drop out immediately later. And by the way, if you retrace the steps, that did happen. Like, one of the people I passed, our most recent vice president, Kamala Harris, and then she dropped out before the voting started, actually in 2020. And when I would end up with an exchange with Bernie or Elizabeth Warren on one of the debate stages, they would immediately ignore me afterwards because I was below them, and you don't want to waste time debating someone who's below you in the polls because there's only downside for you, no upside. So each of them was coached to be like, just talk to Joe Biden, just talk to whoever you're targeting. And Yang was never that guy. Like, I was always just bringing up the rear, and I used to joke that I felt like one of those Looney Tunes characters who runs off the cliff, where if you stop pumping your legs, you fall. That's what the presidential campaign felt like. It's like we're off the cliff, and it's just like, as long as we keep pumping our legs, like we're just going to keep on making debate stages. So just like keep on trucking. And then the mayoral was the reverse, where I was the front runner when I came in, and all of the other candidates, the best way they could get press is to say something mean about me. So every article would just be like, Yang sucks, Yang stinks, like, the guy outside is right, or whatever. And so I was like, oh, like, this is unfortunate, which would never have happened in the presidential. Like, saying something mean about Yang in the presidential made no sense for any of the candidates ever, because I was always bringing up the rear and kind of likable, and you didn't want to punch down, but you also sort of wanted my folks to like you in case I dropped out. Really, being very practical about it. So there were very different experiences. I compared my mayoral run to being like a whale trying to make it out to sea. It was like kind of half becalmed on a beach, like sort of like trying to get back to the ocean. And then every day people would just like throw harpoons into my side, and then I'd be like, just gotta make it to the ocean. Anyway, it gives you a sense of how much I enjoyed that race.
And somewhat on that note, you wrote that losing stunk and that you think that people underappreciate what it really means to run a campaign and lose. What does that actually feel like on a personal level, and how did you end up funneling that energy into being a productive public figure?
Yeah, and I talked to Zach about this this week, and he was like, I had no idea that you were down or struggling after the mayoral, but it did stink, and I didn't let it show. By the way, this also is I think one of the themes of the book, if I did a good job, but there's no utility to sharing the struggle for most people in my boat because no one wants to hear it. Honestly, maybe some of you do, and I appreciate it, and I love you. Like, you know, if you're here, like, you actually might care, but most people don't. and I write that. In my case, I was kind of forced to be functional again because I had a book coming out in October forward. And so I'll give you a chronology. It's sort of fun. I mean, you know, inside, whatever. That's why you're here, maybe. So I come off the trail in 2020, and it's COVID, and we're all inside. You guys remember this? February, March 2020, like where we're all like, what's going on? And we're all Zooming all day. I used to joke that Zoom runs on human souls because we're all tired at the end of the day. So I get a call from my agent, and he says, hey, I think you should write a book. And I said, hey, I'm tired. I'm like really, really tired. Like, I don't know if I want to write a book right now. And he said, I can get you a great deal for a book. And then if you are too tired, you can always stall. But if later you come back and say you want a book deal, I'm not sure I can get you a book deal like this good. And that sounds like pretty good advice, right? So if you're me, then you're like, all right, let's do it. So then we shopped a book, and I got a very significant advance, like very significant. I suppose, I don't know how much I share, who cares, I guess. I got a 7-figure advance for that book, which was much, much more than I could have imagined. You know, maybe 20 times like what I was paid for The War on Normal People, as one example. Because I was really hot. I don't know if you guys remember, Andrew Yang was really hot. I was like Zoolander. Like, Andrew Yang is so hot right now. And I had a very good agent. And so my agent was like, hey, we like, you know, they'll back up the truck for you. And it's like, oh shit. Like, you know, my thoughts must be incredibly valuable. So I write that book through COVID in 2020, run for mayor, lose, and then I come off the trail, and my publisher is like, hey, we want to publish the book as soon as humanly possible. And so if you're in that situation, then you're like, of course, yeah, sure, let's do it. Now, I was grateful after the fact because it forced me to get myself out there. You know, and then like to the extent that I was sad or beaten down or whatever, then you're just like, well, you know, it's like, again, one, no one cares, and two, you have a job to do. And so then over those succeeding weeks, like I kind of started feeling like myself again. And I put in the book, special thank you to everyone who showed up for the forward tour, and I actually recognize a few of you who did, because you helped pick me back up. But it was partially because I felt like I owed my publisher like a really good effort, you know what I mean? Because they gave me like, you know, I mean, I don't want to call it life-changing money, but it was like a very, very significant sum. And so I was like, oh, let me soldier up and do what I can. This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. Now that it's cold outside, are you spending a little bit more time indoors, maybe on a mattress? Maybe you wish that mattress was super comfortable and made just for you with a personalized sleep quiz that you can take at helixsleep.com like I did, where I got an Ultra Dawn firm mattress that is now the hit in my house. That can be you. I've always felt that investing in a mattress is one of the best investments you can make because you might spend $8, $9, even 10 hours a day. You probably shouldn't sleep that much. But if you're going to be on a mattress, shouldn't you make it one that you love, that has a money back, return, 120 night sleep trial, and limited lifetime warranty? If you want to have a mattress that you're actually excited about, go to helixsleep.com/yang for 27% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/yang for 27% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/yang.
And on the subject of forward, tell me a little bit about the decision to leave the Democratic Party. And was there ever a point where you had second thoughts or regrets?
Oh, God, I feel great about having left the Democratic Party now. I mean, they haven't exactly covered themselves in glory in the intervening X years, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, shit, take me back, guys. No, I shouldn't laugh. Oh, no, I shouldn't laugh. I mean, I have no regrets at all. And one of the things I felt this obligation from the people who supported me, and again, thank you if you were in that group, to lay out a real path, lay out a real solution. And so if I, in my heart of hearts, thought that the Democratic Party was going to be able to solve our problems and get us there, I would have said that, and I would have been a Democrat. But over the course of 2020, when I sat down and did the research and dug in and confronted what I thought was like a viable solution, I could not see it from within our current political system. I just couldn't see it. What I could see is like, look, if you had a positive independent political movement arise that tried to combat the polarization and advanced real solutions, that at least had a chance. And at the end of Forward, I'm writing that chapter, I'm saying this is what you would need to get us out of this mess and maybe adopt something like universal basic income. You would need a positive independent political movement. And I wrote these words, and as I wrote them, it's like, oh my God, I just signed up for a decade at least. It said, you would need a positive independent political movement, and I will now start that movement. Like those 6 words or whatever was like, oh my God. Like I just really gave myself a very, very significant lift. But I did not have it in me not to put that in, because I despise when people break down a problem in all of its glory and then be like, someone should do something about that. You know what I mean? At the end, I'm just like, oh, well, you know, how many of you have had that experience where you read a book and it got you all animated about a problem and then you were like, what are we going to do about it? And then it was like a total letdown on the end. Like, tell me if you've read that book. Eric's read that book. Like, a bunch of you read that. I've definitely read that book. If you guys haven't read that book, you should read more, because I think I just described like half of the nonfiction books out there. Anyway, so I felt all of this energy still. Certainly when I was writing Forward, it was like, okay, if you were to make a list of people who could possibly start that independent political movement, I'm probably on the list now, so let me just do it. So I wrote those words and then committed to doing it. And I have no regrets, because I believed it then, I believe it now. And if anything, the case is getting stronger over time. And this is not something I'm happy about. And this is something that, by the way, like really frustrates me, is that when a Democrat's like, oh, like, you know, you're like, it's like, look, like, I'm rooting for you guys. I'm desperate for you to get your shit together, just like a lot of the country is. But you know what my experience was in the subsequent years was I saw Joe Biden running as the Democratic nominee. It was like, this is a catastrophe. Like, he's 81, he's a 39% approval rating. Like, he just spent $20 million and moved his number 0. Like, you guys need to have a fucking primary now. You're gifting this country back to Donald Trump because none of you has the courage or character to stand up to this guy? This guy? And by the way, I was a surrogate for Joe Biden in 2020. I campaigned for him in Pennsylvania and all these places, and I'm proud to have done it because I wanted Trump out, and Joe Biden beat him. But Joe Biden failed us all by not getting out of the fucking way in 2024. And, you know, and we're all paying the price. And you know who facilitated that? Every senior muckety-muck in the Democratic Party who could have just raised their hand and been like, yo, I'm not so sure this is the right way to go. But they all kept their hand down because they cared more about the person in the mirror than all of us and all of the millions of Americans who could have used a real contest. I joke that the Democratic Party should change their name to the Selectors. You know, if you're not going to vote, just be like, hey, we're now the Selector Party. You know, like if you're gonna call yourselves the Democrats, have a fucking vote. Have a fucking primary. And if you have a primary, you know who would have run in 2024? Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Josh Shapiro, like a whole crew of really, really formidable governors who could have looked up and said, you guys angry at the border? I had nothing to do with that. I was in Harrisburg. You know, and then Americans would be like, oh yeah, you were in Harrisburg. You know, whereas Kamala had this really crazy case to make, which was like, hey, everything Joe Biden did was great, but I'm my own person. Like the whole thing was so, you know, it was doomed, honestly, it was doomed. And so I went with a guy named Dean Phillips to New Hampshire in 2024 and was like, guys, we should have a primary. And there was a significant part of me that was like, if Andrew Yang goes and makes that case, they could ignore it because who the hell is Andrew Yang? I mean, I'm not even a Democrat anymore. Like, you know, so like I understood that and got that. But Dean Phillips was a third-term congressman from a swing district that he had flipped and was the vice chair of the DNC and was the advisor to the other Democrats on how to win swing districts. This guy was literally sitting next to you in the cafeteria yesterday. And then he was like, hey guys, we should have a primary. And to Dean's credit, his first move was not to run. His first move was to go to Gretchen Whitmer and say, please run. Go to Gavin Newsom, please run. And they all ignored him. They all wouldn't take his calls because even having a meeting with him would have been seen as disloyal. So having seen the Democratic Party do that to Dean Phillips and end his political career, assassinate his character, sick all of these like journalists and like, you know, casting him as a malignant narcissist who's like a megalomaniac. Furthest thing to the truth, I mean, that guy set his career on fire for us. And his reward was getting blown to smithereens, professionally and reputationally. And Dean, if you're listening to this, I love you. And like a lot of Americans recognize the merit in what you did. This room loves you. You know, fuck those character assassins. So when you ask like, hey, do I regret leaving the Democratic Party? It's like, why would I regret leaving that crew? Like they knifed one of their own who stood up to try and do the right thing.
And in retrospect, do you think that Democrats have learned the necessary lessons from 2024?
So that they had a post-mortem that they then did not share with us. So it's very hard to know what lessons they drew. But the dynamic, by the way, the reason they didn't release the post-mortem was like, we don't need to because we're winning again. They're winning again because Trump and company are terrible, and I'm the first to say Trump and company are terrible. And so they are giving the country back to the Democrats, maybe. And so the Democrats then say, we're good. Like, we can give the country to Trump not once, but twice, and you have no choice but to support us because we are the only game in town. And will that work? Let's just say I'm dubious. Like, I'm dubious that will work. But that's one reason why they don't actually need to have any self-reflection or improvement, because they've set up this you fail, I fail, you fail, I fail dynamic while they've both been doing the failing, and our country is sinking into the muck, and we don't know which way to turn. I'm sorry if this isn't more uplifting. Yeah, no, I mean, hopefully you are here in part because you want me to tell it straight. And the book, I do my Rikki. You can say like, do I do my best to tell it straight in the book?
Absolutely, as always. And on that note, I think one thing I've always admired about you is that you're willing to criticize Trump, but also say that you don't hate the people that support him. Do you think that is the way that the Democrats should assume a posture towards the MAGA world? How going into 2028 with whoever is his hopefully successor, should they address that?
I personally always have a very hard time generalizing distaste or disdain or hatred for any very, very large group of humans. You know what I mean? If you like assemble any group of like millions of humans and be like, hey, they all stink, be like, well, that's kind of hard for me to believe, because I'm sure if I sat down and talked to 20 of them, I would probably like some of them, and some of them maybe I'd agree with you. but like of the 20 or 200 or 20 million or 74 million or whatever the number is. So I've never been one to blame anyone for their vote for any candidate. Everything I learned from a guy named Jonathan Haidt. who you all know as the author of The Anxious Generation and said, hey, we got to get smartphones out of our kids' hands for the sake of their mental health and our collective future. But before that, he wrote a book called The Righteous Mind. How many of you read The Righteous Mind? And so The Righteous Mind, is the subtitle is like why good people are divided by politics and religion. And he goes through and says, look, there are 6 universal human values that we all prize in any culture. And I guess I'll try and run through this because some of you might find it important. So there's caring and fairness, and those are 2 liberal values. And then there's loyalty, authority, and sanctity, and those are the conservative values. And then there's liberty, and each side sort of interprets it differently. And we map to different moral values, and each side now is playing certain strings and chords that then a subset of people respond to. And so if you vote for Trump, it probably just means you really like loyalty, authority, and sanctity. And by the way, some of that affinity to those values is genetic. So like if you say hate all Trump voters, it's like you're literally telling me to hate someone for something that they might be genetically predisposed to applied to like a group of millions or tens of millions. And so like you can tell me someone voted for anyone under the sun and I will not have a judgment about that person, because to me now we're just being segmented by moral frameworks and the way our brains are wired. By the way, one thing I want to share on this too, and this is something that it's like I think about a fair amount, is that as you get older, you tend to get more conservative. My friend Alpa is here. We went to Brown University, and Brown University is probably well known as being very, very liberal. and I love Brown. Like I definitely was acculturated there. And as I'm getting older, do I feel like myself perhaps becoming more conservative because that's the way people tend to evolve as they get older. So it's something that I'm actually vigilant about. It's like, it's like your brain type and your wiring doesn't stay constant throughout life necessarily. So even as I'm like not judging other people for whatever they prefer or who they vote for, like I'm also trying to be like, okay, Andrew, it's like you might have reacted in a certain way. It's one reason why I try not to opine about social media controversies, because I think that stuff's toxic and terrible. I think that by the way is like the Jonathan Haidt stuff on steroids, where it's like I'm gonna like play on your disgust, play on your tribalism, and then everyone's like, no, like you're right, you're wrong. Like all that stuff is a giant. It's worse than a time suck. It's actually like it drains us of our humanity. I am good at some things. I'm not very good at cooking healthy food for myself. I'm really not good at all. It's one reason why I'm so excited to share with you Factor meals. Factor is ready-made food for you, 2 minutes, real food. It's made by chefs, designed by dietitians, delivered to your door. You heat it for 2 minutes and eat. I love the cheesy chicken and peppers. I love the roasted veggie and pesto tortellini. If that sounds delicious to you, it truly is delicious. So, you should check it out and enjoy food that someone else better than you at cooking has prepared, like I do. Head to factormeals.com/yang50off and use code yang50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor.
And on that note, you talk a little bit about Noble Mobile at the end of your book, and why is that your next chapter, and how do you hope it will address some of those issues of social media?
Oh, well, thank you, Rikki. So I started Noble Mobile to solve 2 important problems that I'm very, very passionate about. Number one is that I think that people's optimism is deeply affected by their financial life. So if you feel like the walls are closing in, I remember this when I was in my 20s, like scrapping and I couldn't afford stuff. I felt bad about myself. I couldn't bring a woman on a date because it was too expensive, and I couldn't afford a cab, or whatever the stuff was. It preys on you, and it makes it very, very hard for you to be positive, optimistic, generous, etc. And too many Americans now can't afford things that they want. And so one of the reasons, by the way, this hit me in a minor epiphany, where a lot of people liked me because they sensed I was trying to make them less broke. Hence, hey Yang, where's my $1,000? You know what I mean? And like, I genuinely was trying to make you less broke. So now I'm left thinking, how can I make you less broke right now, right here, like for real? Not just give you good feelings, not make you feel like, oh, that was interesting, like actually make you less broke and richer. And so I went through the American household's cost structure, and you guys probably know this, but it goes housing, healthcare, education, food, fuel, transportation, media, and then number 8 is wireless, where we're spending $83 a month on our wireless connection. I was paying Verizon $150 a month just for myself. Don't judge me. But the average American spending $83, I was spending $150. Why? I don't know. I was an idiot. Whatever. The average European is spending $35 a month. The gap between 83 and 35 is $48 a month times 12 gets you around $600 a year times the, let's call it 40 years you're going to be a wireless subscriber is $24,000. And then you apply an interest rate and compound it over those 40 years, and you're looking at something like $50,000 or $60,000. So we are all paying to Verizon or AT&T essentially a down payment on a very, very modest home or a car. And that's demonstrated by the fact that Verizon paid its shareholders in the last 12 months $11 billion in dividends. And it's the only reason why anyone holds the stock is just that they're just taking cash from chumps like me and then giving them to shareholders. This delta between what Americans are spending and what Europeans spend is about $100 billion a year. And so being an entrepreneur, it's like, can I get Americans' data closer to what they should be paying? And then when I found out that I could, I was like, oh man, I'm just gonna go hog on this. Like I'm just gonna, so I will say to you all, if you wanna give it a try, if you go to noblemobile.com/yang, you can have 3 months of free wireless, which would save the average person $250. And if you're a current member like Erez and you haven't taken us up on that, you just let us know and we'll retro it. So check this out. Like the magical Asian man from the future can now just dispense data. It's like oxygen that we all paid for up the wazoo. And one of the byproducts is that if you end up using less data, we will give you the money back, which then gives you an incentive to doom scroll less, to use social media less. Studies have shown, including Meta's studies, that they got called out during a lawsuit on, but Meta, that if you don't use social media for a week, your mood improves, your mental health improves. How many of you guys believe that? Yeah, some of you believe that because you don't do it. You don't use social media. Do you use social media, Rikki?
Yeah. I mean, it also
same.
professionally obligated too. I didn't have Twitter until my job made me, which is a kind of crazy experience. But
No, same. It's part of my job. You know, I'm a very important person.
but it's also not part of my job too, I admit.
So Noble Mobile actually rewards you for using less screen time. And the average Noble Mobile user is using 17% less screen time after you join. So to review, cut your phone bill in half on average. Average Noble Mobile user is paying $42 a month instead of $83, and reduce your screen time by 17%. And it's real, it's here and now, and just go to noblemobile.com/yang and sign up right now. So I heard this and it was like, if I can get Americans 2% of this $100 billion excess and then put pricing pressure on the rest of the industry, that's a very, very good project. And so that's why I started Noble Mobile. What do you all think?
I'm into it.
Oh, good. Wow. So please do feel free to take us up on it. Nothing would make me happier.
Okay, one last very quick question, and then I'm overdue to go to audience questions. But you do answer this in the book. Will you run again?
I almost certainly will because I'm so young. What am I going to do? Just like be here forever and not run? Plus, I will say my wife seems totally cool with my running again, which is a very important factor in these things for those of you who are married. Please do try and stay married. It's one of my one of my rules. So I almost certainly will run again. And in the book, I say I'm like Nicolas Cage, like gone in 60 seconds. I'm like always 60 seconds away from running again because I could always just take a social media video and be like, we're back, Yang Gang. It's time to finish the job. I'm going to get you that money. But yeah, life is long, and I've got at least another run in me. This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. How did you choose which internet service provider to use? The sad thing is, most of us didn't have much of a choice because ISPs operate a lot like monopolies in the regions that they serve. They then use this monopoly position to take advantage of customers, and yes, they even sell your data, your activities to advertisers and big tech companies, and you don't see a dime. That's why I protect my internet surfing and devices with ExpressVPN. When you use ExpressVPN, it's like a magic portal to a perfectly safe and anonymous internet. And don't take my word for it. This is the #1 VPN service according to CNET. It's used by major companies all over the world. So stop handing over your personal data to ISPs and other tech companies who then mine your activity and sell off your information. Protect yourself with a VPN I trust to keep my privacy online. Visit expressvpn.com/yang. That's expressvpn.com/yang to get 3 extra months free. Go to expressvpn.com/yang right now to learn more.
All right, audience questions.
You were talking about the mayor race, I guess how, and even the presidential race, how I guess a lot of people, your so-called colleagues running were kind of like ignoring you and stuff. And it seems like the Democratic Party, I don't want to make this political, they kind of don't learn their lesson. They just want their guys to be liked and not, they kind of don't like how the people feel about certain. But this last year, if I were to take it to New York, I wanted to bring it to Zohran Mamdani because even though you guys may have differences here or there, when Zohran Mamdani was running, I see a lot of similarities comparing him to you. Like you was running on universal basic income, which I thought was good. People loved it. You explained it in detail. He was running on universal child care. And you know, and he never really despised anybody. He even went to people that voted for Trump and said, you know, what can I do to bring you back? So now I'm not asking this politically, but personality-wise and even just approaching people-wise, do you see a lot of similarities between the way you ran for mayor and the way he ran for mayor of New York City? Do you see a lot of similarities?
Oh, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
I have gotten a version of that from other people, and it makes me glad and happy because I think Zohran's a very smart, positive person, and so if people compare me to him, it's awesome. I think his emphasis on trying to improve people's actual lives in financial terms, I love. I love free childcare, which it seems like might be coming down the pike thanks to Zohran and the governor. And I do know Zohran personally. Like I had lunch with him early in the campaign. So thank you for that. You know, it makes me happy that you saw the similarities. And I do remember you on the Forward Tour, so I was super grateful, Abdul. You're like one of the people that helped bring my spirits back.
Hi, thank you for the event. Very nice to meet you again. You mentioned a lot about tech regulations, and that's sort of like been a main point from like 2019 onwards. I'm open to it. I think one of my concerns is, do I trust the government who couldn't even figure out TikTok to regulate social media, AI, and all these things? If you were designing regulations for tech, how would you do it in a way that would say, for example, protect constitutional rights, make sure that like the government isn't like completely screwing us up?
Yeah, it's a fine question, and it's something I've gotten a version of also on the presidential trail, where people are like, hey, I get, for example, I like the idea of everyone having health care, but can you trust government to do that? Like that, there's a lot of mistrust in our government to deliver in various ways. On regulating social media, I would refer again to Jonathan Haidt, who said, look, you have these algorithms that are designed to do one thing, it's maximize engagement, and it doesn't really matter about the nature of the engagement, and untruths travel, I think, 6 times faster than accurate statements on social media. And so if you change the algorithm where it's like, you really de-emphasize folks who are inflammatory, I don't see that as like a First Amendment problem. What we're doing right now is we're following the market to its logical extremes, and some of those extremes are breaking us. And so if you think that you need some kind of balance, it's going to come from government, because asking these terms to regulate themselves is just so farcical, especially now. I mean, now they're now like all the gloves are off. I don't know if you guys have sensed it. They're not even pretending. They're just like, yo, we're going hard. AI data centers, like, one of us is going to be a trillionaire. Like, let's just freaking go. So anyway, like I think that we can do better, and so you're going to need to trust government to impose some sort of guardrails, in my opinion.
Hi. What is sort of the status of the Forward Party? And perhaps, I don't know, and others do, but just as someone who hasn't heard anything about it recently and thinks this is probably a great moment for there to be more alternative avenues for, I don't know, just political engagement. Curious for.
Well, thank you for the question, Reshma, right? Reshma. I sit before you, the co-founder and co-chair of the 3rd biggest political party in the country by resources, the Forward Party, which is saying very little. It just means that we've raised more than the Libertarians and the Greens, and that's not very hard to do, turns out. So the Forward Party is growing all the time. We have 79 elected officials right now, so we should break 100 by the fall. And at what number does a political movement become real, viable, like contender? It's like, 100, 200, 300. What's interesting is that number will grow over time to be, let's call it 1,000. And even if you had 1,000 mayors, school board members, city council members, county executives, the odd congressperson or two that's aligned, maybe even a governor. And there's a governor who's running in Michigan right now that we like named Mike Duggan, who is the successful mayor of Detroit. A Democrat, and then he just turned in his party badge and was like, hey, in order to get Michigan going in the right way, I'm going to have to do this as an independent, and he's currently leading. So there are various opportunities, but even with 1,000 local elected officials, you wouldn't hear much about Forward from the national news media, because there's a narrative that they're deeply invested in, and the narrative doesn't like there being more than 2 teams. Being honest, and I've now been exposed to that in like all sorts of ways, some of which I share in the book. But I agree with you that the number of Americans who say that we're independent is just growing all the time. And I joke that our number 1 recruiter is the headlines. Like the number 2 recruiter is the 2 parties. It's like they just keep turning off everyone. It's like, oh, I'm an independent. So the Forward Party is political infrastructure for independence. 2/3 of young Americans say they're independents, don't think that either party has it working. Time is on our side. Like, people say, how can you succeed? I actually flip it, I'm like, how can we not succeed? Like, if you fast forward 20 years, like, do we really think it's gonna be these 2 parties still just like playing, like, you take it, I take it? Like, I can't imagine that. So the Forward Party is growing all the time. But I appreciate the question a great deal, because I also hear that all the time. It's like, hey, what are you guys up to? And we're grinding out victories around the country. If anyone wants to join us, just go to forwardparty.com. Check us out. There's some people here that they're really positive, earnest humans.
Hey, Andrew. You were really forward-thinking in 2020 on crypto. I feel like you were one of the only candidates really talking about it. Obviously, this administration has done a lot on crypto, and putting aside the sort of very obvious grifting that's happening, I think at least my friends in the space, seem to be pretty happy with sort of how it's moved forward with regulations and things like that. I'm curious your thoughts. Do you see some good, some things that you sort of align to and think are positive, putting aside some of the negatives?
Thanks, Erez. So I have been generally supportive of crypto because I saw it as a way to relieve poverty at scale. I mean, you had this new set of currencies and tools that generated hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value. So I was like, ooh, we might be able to get rid of poverty with this stuff. I've been very disappointed by the lack of genuine philanthropy from folks in the community, and that the main use case that everyone's using it for is financial speculation and hedging against the dollar. Now, my dream is for the blockchain and crypto to be used for localized currencies. I think that is the future. Like, we have to start building ways for people to support businesses like the one we're in right now, and have value circulate throughout the community. By the way, there are certain Jewish communities that do a version of that right now, where they support their school, and then in return they get coupons that they use at local businesses at a discount, and so the local businesses then are tacitly supporting the local school. When I was running in 2020, I talked about the Amazonification of the economy, and you've got this like giant like vacuum like sucking things out. So localized currencies are a way to keep it close to the ground. It's like, you know, shop small on steroids forever, but you can include arts and creativity or health and wellness or other activities. And that to me should be the use case that we're holding up as something that improves people's lives on the ground. So I went to crypto folks and was like, hey guys, like let's do that. And there wasn't that much interest. And so and by the way, I also heartily dislike what this administration is doing, that's self-serving. You know, like there are some not great things going on that dimension. So I still believe in the potential. I still think that there's good to be done. I'm not someone who's like, oh, just throw out, you know, the set of tools because I'm not a fan of a particular political administration. But I think it's falling well short of its potential for people.
So I'm really curious about your thoughts on like artificial general intelligence and artificial super intelligence from like your tech friends. I remember listening to the Joe Rogan podcast when he had Jensen Huang on, and then when he asked him about the potential for AI to like be, you know, destructive towards us, like Wanton kept denying like there is potential for it to be destructive, as if maybe he's being disingenuous or he doesn't even himself know or think about, you know, the potential repercussions.
Thank you for the question. I have been one of the skeptics in terms of the timeline of the arrival of artificial general intelligence. There are folks who've been hyping it up, and look, like I'm not someone who like completely wants to diminish the species-wide possible effects of AI. Like, can I imagine AI hacking our power grid? Yes. Can I imagine AI spoofing our governments and making us think we're at war? Yes. Like, there are a bunch of things like that that I can totally see as on the table that are well short of artificial general intelligence. You know what I mean? Artificial general intelligence is like, I'm like God. I'm the super intelligence. I self-improve. It's like that stuff. And by the way, this is the tricky thing, is that there could be an AI that's so far beyond us that the ability to distinguish between what is in front of us and actual artificial general intelligence might be quite difficult. You know? I mean, if we're here and this thing's here, or not this thing's here, but it seems like it's here from every test we can give it. But it might not actually be conscious in the same way, even if like you give it 12 tests and it seems conscious, you know what I mean? So I'm someone who's very concerned about a lot of the stuff that will happen even if artificial general intelligence is years and years away, which by the way, I happen to believe. I happen to believe it's years and years away. There are some people that disagree with me that are very smart and they yell at me and I'm just like, I don't see it yet, like in that way. I see the way the models are being developed and they're incredibly proficient at addressing certain tasks, but like they're not God. I mean, not to say, is artificial general intelligence the same thing as God? No, but from our perspective, again, those two things might be somewhat hard to distinguish. So I don't know if this answers your question. Like, I'm worried about all of these things I see as very immediate impacts, even if AGI does not come down the pike. And though I'm not someone to discount, again, some of like the more global scenarios. Again, that's a little bit of a downer to end this stuff on. What? No, I mean, it's a fine question. It's a very good question, and I really love you. But yeah, it was a little downbeat. So what can I say? It's a little more upbeat. Rikki, help me out.
I don't know. I mean, you're going to run again. That's the most
Thank you.
upbeat thing.
That's very upbeat. Thank you. We'll end on that note. And Rikki's upcoming book, Screwed. Everyone find it. Screwed by Rikki Schlott. Screwed by Andrew Yang. Thank you all, New York. Love you.